Hello everyone. How are you guys doing? Thank you so much for joining us. We're super excited, and I am going to invite Esraa to join us.
Assalamu
Hi,
alaikum.
how are you?
Alhamdulillah, how are you?
Good to see you.
Good to see you too, Taka, finally.
Yeah, it's so awesome. I'm very excited for this first session of Maktabatee Talks and to meet you in person and to make sure that we have a conversation that's helpful to everybody here in our audience. Hi, everybody.
Inshallah.
Marhaba, salam. If you're joining us right now, we'd love to know where you're calling from. So make a comment, say hello, and also tell us if you're a parent or an educator, what are the ages of the children that you are teaching? That helps us, focus our discussion on the right age group. So we look forward to starting this, and we'll get started. So I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Tuqa. I am a co-founder of Maktabatee.com. We are a US-based online boutique of Arabic children's books and goods. And our goal is to create a community of resources and people that are interested in teaching their children Arabic for a variety of reasons. Whether you're teaching your child Arabic because you want them to read Quran or to be able to talk to their grandparents or just to have those multilingual skills, we want to create the resources for you to be able to do that. And this series is part of that effort. So we're starting this series because we want to make sure to give you value and to give you tangible resources. We know that there's been a plethora of resources over the past couple of years in Arabic, and a lot of people have them but don't know how to put them to use. So there are different ways of teaching Arabic, whether it's at home through homeschooling, through the Montessori method, whether your children go to public school and Arabic school on the weekends. You're probably looking for some guidance as to how to use these resources. So we hope this will be an insightful discussion, and I'll turn it over to Esraa to introduce herself.
Thank you, Taka. So my name is Esraa Haider. I'm a mom of two. I'm originally from Lebanon and I live in the US as well. I'm an AMI Montessori trained guide for the children ages 3 to 6. And my children go to a Montessori school, and with everything that happened with COVID, just like everybody else, we started our home learning journey. I originally have a marketing background. I have like 8 years of marketing experience, and then I founded a children's play space in Lebanon called Mawadda Kids Center, and that's kind of really what got me into the world of getting more deep with children and understanding the child, and in addition to my own children. So that's kind of a quick nutshell of who I am and where I'm from.
That's awesome. I remember that I saw those early posts from you, how I discovered you, about you were sharing some of the activities and programs that you were running there. It's so inspirational. And then I recently learned that you also worked for one of our favorite Arabic publishers. So it's
It's a small
exciting.
world.
Yeah, it is a small world indeed, and I'm so happy that we're able to connect. So I'm going to just dive right in, and if anybody has any questions, please feel free to add them into the question box or the chat box. We did get a couple of your questions, so we'll definitely come to those. But tell me a little bit about how you became interested in the Montessori method specifically.
So when I started the center in Lebanon, I had a lot of opportunities to observe children. We would spend 3 months with them each year for about 2 to 3 hours each day. And I was getting the same children over and over again. So it really opened my eyes to what these children are capable of. And because it was a play-based center, we weren't doing any academics or ABCs. I saw some really interesting observations, and I thought to myself that I really want to understand the child better, and that there's something going on here that's beyond the classroom and that we don't usually see in the classroom. And so I had already read about Montessori when I had my own children. And just like any other parent, you read a lot of parenting books and different educational philosophies. But the Montessori method really appealed to me because I felt that it really goes hand in hand with the child's natural development. There wasn't anything in it that I felt, that's alarming. Oh, that doesn't sound right. If anything, I wanted to know more. I was like really eager and excited, and I felt that there were so many new things that I just hadn't even thought about or considered. And that's kind of really what made me want to know more. And luckily, I was in a state where the training center is like 15 minutes away from my house, and I thought, this is too good to be true, that I'm living somewhere where there's a training center right next to my house, and I'm really interested in this. And so it was a really big change of career and a really big life change for me, because you've worked in a certain field and you imagine yourself that that's really what you want to do for the rest of your life. But subhanAllah, Allah has other plans for us. And so I really wanted to dive deep into it and to understand it, initially for my own children and for myself. And I just dove into this beautiful, fascinating world of understanding who the child is and who we are as adults.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I told you that I have a soft spot for Montessori because my children's initial education was there, and that's really where they built a love of learning in them. And I am very indebted to their teachers who taught them how to just be very passionate about learning. And I think it's because of the natural inclination that the Montessori method follows. So I'm glad. So tell us how you started incorporating Arabic into your training, into your teaching your children.
So, when we got to language in our training, my ideas were, how can I make this into Arabic? How can we transform this into Arabic? And so I thought the best place to start was with my own children. And really what I wanted to do was not to take a curriculum from abroad and just open it and just implement it at home. I really wanted those principles that I was learning in the Montessori method and bring them into my household. So how do you do that? It's a different language. It's more complex. So what I thought about was the principles of Montessori. What are the principles that Dr. Montessori talks about in terms of how the child learns? And that is how I'm going to incorporate Arabic into it. And this applies to any other topic, any other language. Mm-hmm. So these principles are, we want the child to experience language, which is something that's really abstract, and we want to make it concrete. So how can I make Arabic concrete? Do I give him a sensorial experience? Do I give him, experience the letters in Play-Doh and in sand, and actually physically showing him how these letters are connecting? And so how can I make it concrete? How can I allow the child to experience the language? So the Montessori principle is we want to give the child experience, exploration, and expression. So the 3 E's. Mm-hmm. So, and these can be applied to the Arabic language. So I thought to myself, how can I allow my children to experience the Arabic language in our home? Mm-hmm. And how can they explore it and, really enjoy it? Mm-hmm. And how are they able to express it? That is kind of in a general overview of how my thought process was. Another aspect was that when we look at learning, we usually, especially in Arabic, we're so focused on finding the right resource for the right age of our child that we forget that there are 2 other components to learning, which is the adult and the environment. And this is something, again, that the Montessori approach really focuses on. So if I'm thinking about the Arabic language and implementing with my children at home or in a school setting, I'm not only thinking about what resources I have, but I'm also thinking about me as an adult in terms of, can I apply this? Even if I have the greatest resources, but it's something that's not applicable to me or something that's too complicated for me to actually implement in the long run, then that means I need to change something with my formula. Mm-hmm. When it comes to the environment, and we're talking about creating an Arabic environment, I'm really thinking about not necessarily creating a classroom tulqa, but more creating an Arabic environment that is alive with us every single day.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I think that's what children connect to most. I'm going to ask you one of the questions that we got from our audience, which is, how do you create a multilingual home environment independent of specific lessons? Okay, so consistency is key here. And it's really, really important that we focus on, if I'm the parent and going to be speaking, one of the parents is going to be speaking in Arabic, that we do that all the time, that mom always speaks Arabic or dad speaks the other language.
And that consistency is really crucial, especially for the children between 0 to 6, because they're still building. Dr. Montessori spoke about how the child has a sensitive period for language and that they're able to absorb that language. So when we're not consistent, we're creating confusion. So that is really the key. And besides focusing on independent lessons, for us to create a home Arabic learning environment, it means that we need to be speaking in Arabic, singing in Arabic, talking in Arabic, poetry in Arabic. For me, the key statement, the key thing, mantra that I say to myself is, Arabic is not as equal as English, it is more important than English. And I remind myself of that constantly. If we want to take it down a level, it is as equal. So whatever it is that I'm going to be doing in English, I want to make sure that I'm still doing the same amount in Arabic. So yes, consistency, making it part of your daily routine, and realizing that it is not a Sunday class thing, or realizing that it's not a one-time thing. It is, we live and we breathe, and this is going to be much more challenging for those who are non-Arab speakers. So what do those do? Well, they can't read Arabic poetry and do that. So we focus on oral language. We can, they can listen to Arabic, include it more, make it happening more. Think to yourself, what am I already doing now? And how can I take it up a level, just a little bit more?
Yeah. I see your question about which language or Arabic do you use for one parent? Do you ever have a parent speak in Fusha as their language? So there's always this struggle with people who speak Arabic natively, is do we use the dialect or Fusha? So how do you balance those competing demands?
This has been one of my biggest struggles, honestly. First of all, because we don't speak Fusha in general, as everybody knows. So the one way that I've tried to incorporate it is that when we are in our learning environment, or when we are doing our classes, I speak only in Fusha, because I only speak Arabic with my children at home, but I speak spoken Arabic. So, but it's as if their brains now know that as soon as we're in our learning environment, or we have like a 2-hour work session, I will only be speaking in Fusha. Even if I'm giving a lesson that is might be English related, my initial requests, my initial communication will be in Fusha. That is one thing. Another thing is that we try as much as we can to listen to Arabic stories in Fusha. Even when I'm reading the Arabic story, it's much easier for me to read it in spoken language, honestly. But I insist on reading it in Fusha because it gives them such a rich vocabulary. And this is really one of the key components of language development in the Montessori method, is giving children rich and precise language. And this is only achieved when we are speaking Fusha, because in Fusha, it's unified. Whether you're from Morocco or Jordan or Lebanon, you will be able to achieve that. And we'll reach a stage when the child is older and we'll realize, uh-oh, I'm late. Like, I should have started speaking Fusha. And this happened with my own daughter. It was when she started to read the Quran that I realized and started actually reading Arabic. And she would read these Arabic texts that are in Fusha. And she's like, what does tamayalat mean? And I'm like, oh my God, like, how do you not know that? Because I've never told her, I've never spoken Fusha, or as much as I should have. So I think it's to dedicate time for Fusha and see the opportunities where you're able to incorporate it as much as possible. Even if it's just listening to an audiobook or listening to some songs. Those are all really important elements.
Yeah, I think that's a good balance. That's one reason why we use Arabic books to introduce Fusha, but continue to reinforce some of those words and just the practice, whatever the child feels comfortable speaking in. If it is spoken Arabic, then just encourage them, and then find other ways to incorporate Fusha in that process. So let's see. Another question that I had for you is, how can someone begin to introduce Arabic through the Montessori method to their children? So let's use the most basic example. Somebody already goes full-time to English speaking school. They want to introduce some elements of the Montessori method when they teach their children Arabic in the part-time capacity.
Okay, so we begin at the basic level, which was enrichment of language. That is our starting point. So instead of focusing on letters and how the letter changes and all of those details about the Arabic language, which are really complex, we have something called language boxes. So in this language box, we'll have like small items, and we will tell the child, you know, this is Arnab, and we'll show him a small rabbit. And that way the child is getting meaning and he's understanding, because if we go the other way, which is we show the child the letters and he knows all his letters, and then he's putting these letters together and he's making a word, and he made the word, let's say warda, but he doesn't know what warda is, then I've really lost my purpose. The Montessori approach to language is creating a relationship with a child, between this child and the language, so that it's not just a subject that it's not this burden that he wants to carry on. We start with the familiar. So I'm not going to start with objects that are about outer space when this child we've never talked about outer space. I'm going to start with objects that are in my home. I'm going to start with objects that are in his room. And they don't have to be miniatures. It could be a huge basket with 5 or 6 things. And every single day we go through them and we say, you know, kitab, qalam, furshad, and we just name them. So the child is now interested. The key word here is interest. We want our children to be interested in the Arabic language before anything else. We want them to be eager and excited about that. And the only way to do that is to simplify it, give them the familiar things that they are, so that they're not bombarded, and then we kind of break down the process into small steps. So that would be the starting point.
That's great. No, I think that's very useful, and I remember that's how those are some of the elements that my children started using in their Montessori classrooms, and I tried to, you know, as much as I could, latch on that interest that they had, and then add some Arabic to it. Some people might think that they need like a full Montessori classroom or environment to be able to properly embrace this method. Do you think that's true? And if not, you know, what's the compromise that they can make?
So I totally disagree with that notion that you need to have the Montessori materials in order to apply the Montessori principles. What needs to happen is that you need to be aware of the Montessori principles, and then how can I make my child an independent learner? How can I offer him material that he can explore and experience? And the alternative to that is to look at the Montessori lessons and see, okay, if this lesson is being presented with this material, how can I make that at home? And especially with language, I'll let you in on a little secret, Safa. In the language curriculum in the Montessori environment, we make our materials from scratch. So in my training, I did all of the language material, not all, I would say 90% of the language material is handmade. And it's basically, you know, let's think about making the letters. You don't have to physically make the sandpaper letters. That's fine. You can write the letter with your own handwriting. That is still okay. So I guess my biggest suggestion would be, don't take Montessori to the heart completely, because that's where we will fail, because we will think that I will never be able to have all this material, and I will be never be able to implement it completely. And I would encourage people to rid themselves from that notion that you need to have a complete Montessori curriculum or a complete Montessori material in order to apply Montessori principles. See what you have, start with what you have already, and ask yourself, how can I make it more accessible to my child? How can I make it more sensorial for my child? And that is your path to starting a Montessori curriculum.
Yeah, no, that's super useful. And I think it can be intimidating, but we have a lot of ways that people can start to put together these building blocks of having a Montessori environment and adding Arabic to it. So I really appreciate that. Let's see. So as we're coming out to closer to 12:30, are there any challenges that you faced during this process, and how did you overcome them? Did your children maybe say that they didn't want to do Arabic, or how did you manage that?
Absolutely, and all the time. This is a real struggle for everyone. I guess my biggest challenge was to really find my children's interests. And so what I really did was I took a step back and I said to myself, I have some resources. What am I going to do with these resources? And I thought about me, the adult, and the environment. So instead of thinking that I'm going to have one corner in my house that's for Arabic, I make Arabic everywhere. We have Arabic stories everywhere. We have Arabic baskets. We have Arabic audiobooks. So the biggest challenge really was not my children themselves as much as it was the work that I had to do on myself and the expectations that I had from my children. Realizing that I'm not comparing myself to being in an Arab country was really the biggest thing that I had to get out of my head. Because I would constantly say, oh, they're doing this in the first grade in Lebanon. This is what my child should be doing right now. But that's not a realistic expectation. Your child is not hearing, communicating with children who are speaking Arabic in the same amount. So I guess I just lowered my expectation. And you know what? That's the beauty of the Montessori method, is that we work in like a 3-year cycle. We have like 3 years to work with.
Yeah.
And that really allows us to realize that the child's growth is not linear. They don't grow bits and pieces. Sometimes there's this exponential growth that happens, and that can only happen if we've really started at the right place. So my biggest dilemma, my biggest issue was really making sure that I'm starting in the right place, which is a place of interest, a place of consistency, a place of really putting the plan, and not necessarily like a homeschool plan with like all these Excel sheets and anything, but really making sure that I'm making Arabic a part of our life and my children know that. The simplest example is when I wanted to like reflect on myself is, when was the last time I held an Arabic book in front of them and they saw me reading Arabic? And that was really like a big, light bulb in my head, was like, they don't see me reading Arabic. I do read Arabic, but they don't see me do that. And that's something that I should really focus more on and make it not just about them, but them realizing that Arabic is our family, it is our culture, it is our language, making them realize the importance of it, besides the facts of knowing their letters and reading, and making it an academic thing that they have to just tick off.
Yeah. No, I really appreciate that you brought up that point, because a lot of the times I get really overwhelmed because I'm like, okay, what level should they be at? But I have to recognize the environment that we're in, the challenges that we have. Each home has their own pace, takes their own pace. And that's why we hope that these tips will be useful, but not discouraging to people who aren't at a certain level. Everyone has discovered their Arabic journey and is starting it at a different point. And so it's important for people to be kind to themselves, and as long as the intention is there, that you're doing a good job.
And just one more thing is to really trust the child. I personally would underestimate what my youngest would be able to absorb. Like, I'd be reading the Arabic poetry and I say, no, this is too early for him. There's no way he's going to know this. And then a week later, he's reciting it. And I'm like, wow. So we really, really don't, we should trust our children that they are capable of learning this, even if they're not physically communicating to us that they know it. It is all being taken in. And that is like one of the biggest takeaways of Montessori education, is that the child has an absorbent mind and a sensitive period for language. Give them the best of the language. Give them the richest language. Give them those big words in Arabic. And don't be afraid to do so. No harm will be done if we do give them that language.
And I think you say that honestly because of the Montessori principles, because you have children who are in an age group between 3 and 6, and a 3-year-old can pick up a book in that classroom that is supposed to be for a 6-year-old, but nobody's going to stop him. Nobody's going to say, oh no, you're not allowed to go past your preschool grid of books. So that's something I also learned from that method, is that don't limit the child. Let them be the one who guides you into what interests them. So I have one more question that we received from our audience, which is, what's your favorite Arabic book? And then we'll end with any tips that you have for people to, just in general about approaching Arabic learning and teaching.
So is it my favorite children's Arabic book?
I said favorite book. So I'm guessing.
Okay, it would be Alif Ba الحيوانات, which is like behind
I
me.
remember that one, yeah.
It's not a story, it's more of an encyclopedia
Wikipedia, yeah.
for children, but I guess what made it my favorite was just the relationship that we keep on coming back to it, and the fascination with learning about different kinds of animals. So for right now, this is it. There's another one for my youngest. It's called Mazin wa Namla, and my child's name is Mazin, and so that's one of his favorites, and so it's kind of become mine as well.
That's awesome. So as we wrap up, I just want to leave people with 2 to 3 tips that you can share with them about how they can, approach this journey of teaching their kids Arabic, whether it involves Montessori principles or not.
So I guess my first tip would be to start with whatever you have right now and focus on that instead of thinking about the long-term picture of I need to have this and this ready before I can introduce this to my child. You will grow with your child and you will learn with your child as you go. So it is definitely okay to look for resources and want to have the best resources, but don't fall into a rabbit hole of thinking that you need to have everything complete before you can actually start doing Arabic with your child. My second tip would be from the Montessori approach is to try to think of language as, I'll give you a quick example. If we're reading a sentence, try to include movement in that learning. So act out. If we read that, Samir fed the fish, at'ama samaka, let's pretend that Samir is here and, imagine that you're feeding the samaka. And so incorporating movement into our children's learning instead of just sitting at a desk and making it about worksheets. And I know that there's so many resources and so many amazing people out there on Instagram and home educators who are incorporating different ideas. So look for those ideas and see what can be applied to you. The other idea is to kind of make things a little bit more concrete. So if I'm talking about وقفت فاطمة خلف الشجرة, we can physically go outside and stand behind a tree. You don't need material for that. So, trying to make it real and make it, the most important thing is to really make it applicable and relatable to your culture. So we don't want to be talking about things that they just, it's not familiar to them. Keep it familiar. The third piece of advice would be if you have multi-age children, don't be afraid of that, make that work for you. And the way to do that is to incorporate your older child to be teaching with you. So many times I would give my older child a book to read, not necessarily physically read, but to orally read to the younger child. And that is great practice for the older child. And it's also another way for the younger child to hear and listen to the Arabic language from someone beside mom and dad or someone beside an audio book. So including the older child into the learning, into the teaching process, even if it's just a simple way and giving them that task is also something that I've found to be really important.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think that those are really useful tips, and I hope that people will be able to take some of those and be inspired by them. And sometimes we just need that push. Everyone has, high points and low points, and hopefully these talks and chats will give people a little bit more motivation to continue on their journey, to pick up where they left off, or just to keep going. I really appreciate your time, Esraa, and it's awesome to hear about the learning environment that you've created for your children. Please make sure you are following Esraa for more tips on Montessori method in English and in Arabic. And we hope you guys will tune in for our next Maktabatee Talks. We'll be advertising that soon. And if you have any ideas or other questions, definitely shoot us a message. We appreciate you all joining us. Have a good day. Bye, Esraa. Salam.
Thank you so much, Tofa. Assalamu alaikum.